This just in at 8 p.m. The gang is here. We're all gathered for another episode of This Just In. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you're staying safe. I hope everyone is doing well, following the regulations, practicing social distancing. We have a big show planned for you this evening. We'll be talking about COVID-19 and the college system. We'll also be reviewing the NFL draft, as well as looking at episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Dance. I'm Marsha Boyce, and of course, as you can see, we have a special guest here with us today, but I'm going to let Justin do the honors. Justin?
Well, hi, I am Justin Marville, and overall, we have my personal friend, ESPN College Hoops Analyst, a former coach who coached at the D1, D2, and D3 level, as well as played at D1 level, founder of PhD Hoops, none other than Richie Schueler. How's it, Richie?
What's up, guys? Doing great. I'm in Los Angeles. Life is good, except I'm just like you guys. I'm stuck inside. So thanks for having me on.
Well, you said yes, you're in Los Angeles. Give us a bit. What's the situation like over there on the West Coast?
It's in California particularly. Especially in Los Angeles, they're not wanting us to leave our homes, kind of like probably it is there in the island, unless, of course, we're doing some essential business. We have to go to a store, we have to, maybe we need to go to the post office for some reason or something like that. I think it's a little more fluid here. I think we're able to get out of the house and do a little bit more than maybe you guys are allowed to do. They're allowing us to exercise outside and whatnot, but still, social distancing is a big thing over here.
Well, you were telling us that you were actually supposed to be on island as we speak. So that kind of sucks.
Supposed to be on what? I'm sorry.
You were supposed to be here in Barbados this week, right? Or last week?
Yeah, last week I was supposed to be there. Francis Williams, the Basketball Association president, had invited me to come down and do a little camp with some of the premier up-and-coming players on the island. And we had the whole thing planned out for about a month. And then, of course, coronavirus takes over our lives. And so really bummed out because it would have been my, I think, 4th time on the island doing some basketball stuff, and supposed to come back in July with 3 different basketball teams to play and compete against some of the better players on the island then too. So, man, my island time has taken a back seat right now.
So it goes. You want to get the ball rolling, Marsha, or should I?
Sure, definitely, Richie. With the situation going on globally, sport has essentially come to a halt, and the college system in the U.S., particularly the NCAA, has been affected. So far, what would you say has been some of the major impact that you're seeing with this stalling of the season?
Well, there's a lot of things to think about. If you're talking along the lines of college athletics, there is a lot going on with eligibility concerns. Is the NCAA, and I think they will, are they going to give waivers? Are they going to give some exceptions to folks who are missing out on their seasons right now? As you all know, the NCAA tournament got nixed this year, which was really disappointing. And so there was a push for a long time. So should we allow all these men's and women's basketball players who missed the NCAA tournament, who missed their postseason, should we give them another year of eligibility of some sort? I don't think they're going to allow that to happen. But what they are doing is the spring sports, the baseball, softball, track and field, lacrosse, so on and so forth. Those athletes are certainly going to get an extra year of eligibility. And I think that's good. I think those kids deserve that. The scary thing is, fall, winter of this upcoming year, next spring, are we going to have college athletics? And when that happens, are we going to continue to give players waivers and things that, at some point, players are going to be 27 years old playing college sports if that continues to happen.
So in light of that, Richie, what do you think is going to happen? If you were in charge, what would your solutions be going forward?
As far as whether kids should play or not, whether the NCAA should allow it, it's a difficult question. And it's not just with the NCAA. It's also, state governments, national governments have to make decisions. For example, the Los Angeles mayor came out a week and a half ago and said, hey, I don't see any large gatherings taking place in the city of Los Angeles and the surrounding areas until at least 2021. So that means all concerts are gone. All sporting events, more than likely, are going to be without fans. High school teams, there's a lot of high schools across all states in America that didn't get to play in their state championships in basketball, and then also in the other sports they're not able to play. It's a complicated issue because obviously we have to look out for the safety of all of us. And young people, more than likely, are not going to be nearly as affected as middle-aged and older people with this coronavirus. But until there's a vaccine, I just don't honestly know how we're going to be able to function. And we're probably a year away from getting a vaccine. And then how long is it going to take for people in the United States, let alone people in Barbados and the rest of the world? I don't know who it's going to start with, but everybody in the world has to get that vaccine at some point. How long is it going to take to get that? So you have these young people playing sports. Sure, they might be okay, but if they happen to spread it amongst each other and then they take it home and grandma gets sick, then it's scary. Mom and dad get sick, aunt and uncles, then it becomes a problem. So institutionally, professional organization-wise, even government-wise, nobody can really afford that liability of the opportunity to potentially spread that virus among other people. I'm afraid that this might be the new normal for the next year or so.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned new normal. With, the situation in the US is so diverse, where you have some states who are heavily impacted and others not so much. With the NCAA system, being university based, it isn't like pro sport that you can just go. You still have to follow, what the university itself is doing first and when universities will be reopened and so forth. So that was one of the, I guess, the interesting things I'm looking at coming out of all of this. But I was wondering, though, in terms of, let's say, proposals for games behind closed doors, etc., do you think that's something that would be feasible in the college setup?
Well, honestly, I think that's the route it's going. For example, if we finish the NBA and the NHL season here in the United States, I bet it's going to be without fans. And if we do have fans, and this goes into college as well, but if there are going to be fans, it's going to be a very small amount of people allowed in that arena, and they're probably going to have to stay spread. Not just 6 feet apart, which is what everybody's saying. It might be, hey, every 10 or 15 feet apart, we have people that don't live together sitting. And same with restaurants and things like that. Unfortunately, in the United States, some restaurants have opened back up, and I think we're going to see this virus continue to grow in those areas. It's already happened in a couple of states here in the United States, so we'll see. That's kind of the test right now of what's going to happen. I hope everything's okay, but we shall see. But that might be kind of the test to see what's going to happen if you try to bring sporting events together in games without fans. I'll tell you this, about a month and a half ago when all this went down, I was scheduled to do the Big Sky Championship game in Boise, Idaho on ESPN. And then also I was scheduled to do 2 days before that, on a Thursday, I was scheduled to do all 4 Big West Conference quarterfinal men's basketball games, 4 games in one day. So I prepared for days and weeks to prepare for those 4 games. On the drive there, I get the phone call, hey, man, it's been canceled, but come on over and say goodbye to everybody. I'm like, all right. So, yeah, I mean, it's tough, but it was going to be awkward because they had already decided in that game or for that tournament, they had already decided that the entire tournament was going to be without fans. So I know as a coach, you certainly don't always like what the media has to say about you, especially in live time. But can you imagine you guys are in the media being in a game and being all excited and crescendoing into what you're trying to say, and the coach is looking at you and the players with an embarrassed look like, what are you doing? There's an 18,000 seat arena with 50 people in it. But you have to create the atmosphere for the folks watching the game on the other end. But I guarantee you, players and coaches are going to hear everything you say, and they might not like what you have to say about them in live time.
And that also raises an interesting point, Justin, where, we talk about the impact on players, the impact on leagues, but the media landscape has been tremendously impacted by this. And analysts like yourself are essentially, some of them, are out of a job. What is the impact like for you personally?
It's been rough. I have about 3 streams of income. I don't have any one full-time job. I run a couple small businesses. They're a full-time job, but I'm not getting paid from each of them as a full-time job. But they've both been affected. One is basketball that runs a lot of camps and skills training. Can't do any of that right now. I can't bring kids together to do that. One of them is the travel tours that I run. We take trips and take tours overseas like I do. I always bring that group to Barbados every July. I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years. And then and the other is the television. And, I lost the last 5 games on my schedule. And there's another tournament. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the TBT, the winner take all $2 million tournament. I've announced in that the last couple of years. John Ugar. Yeah, I do the West Coast region. John Mugar, who runs the TBT, does a phenomenal job. But I haven't talked to him in the last few weeks. But I wonder if that's going to take place this July as it has the last 5 years. So to answer your question, Marsha, it's been rough. There has been an influx of people in the United States applying for unemployment. Do you guys have something similar in Barbados?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
It's overdone right now in the U.S. because people are struggling, and so now I'm trying to find different ways to bring income in. I'm likely going to have to take a job in a local business that is going to open up just to make ends meet in the near future. But at some point, that's just what you have to do. You have to get by. I'm sure things were a lot worse 100 years ago when the influenza came through in 1917, 1918.
I'm glad you brought up income and job loss. What does this situation mean for like a multi-million-dollar or even billion-dollar industry like the NCAA? Like, how do they recover all these profits lost, and what will be the new normal for them going forward?
What's funny is the NCAA, and I'm a big fan of the NCAA. I know there's some high members of the sports media who are very negative towards the NCAA, but what will we do without college athletics? That's you, Justin. What are we going to do without college athletics, man? So we got to be in their good graces. 5-6 years ago, they had a budget set aside for something like this happening. Well, maybe it was longer ago than that, but 5-6 years ago, I heard that they decided to spend that money elsewhere. And so now they don't have that reserve. Now, don't quote me all the specifics, but that's something that I read. So, something to that effect where they probably wish they didn't put those resources elsewhere so they could have it for this moment right now. But it is what it is. So, yeah, they're taking a big hit, the NCAA. Now, NCAA, I mean, they take a lot of criticism for having a lot of income. But I'll tell you, basketball and football really fund the bulk of NCAA sports when it comes to the NCAA championships and things like that. So they're going to take a big hit. They already have this spring. They're going to take a big hit if it doesn't happen in the fall and winter as well. But just look at it also like this from a college basketball perspective. Just take Division I. In college basketball, there's a million different levels: Division I, II, and III, and NAIA, and junior college. So NCAA Division I is what everybody knows. That's what's on TV. There's been hardly any coaching movement this year. I think there's only 22 Division I jobs that came open this season. So hardly any movement, and only one Power 5 out of 350, 360. Normally it's like 75, 80, whatever it is. It's a lot. I mean, maybe that's on the high end, but only 22 came open, and only one big school Power 5 team in Wake Forest, and that was just a few days ago. So it's a bad time for college basketball coaches who are out of a job this year because maybe they got fired last season. Bad time for them to try to look to get back in. So coaches are trying to find all kinds of ways just to use this time for professional development, and also trying to teach their players like life lessons about, when things don't go your way, you got to deal with it. So it's just a tough time all the way around.
And on that end now, Richie, next year was supposed to be the year that the NCAA institutes a rule that sees amateur or collegiate athletes being able to make money off of their likeness. Do you see a situation now where they push back that rule, or do they go full steam ahead in an area where they'll be, losing money anyhow?
You talking about the Fair Pay to Play Act that California passed?
Yes, that your state passed.
Yeah, my state. Yeah, they passed it back in the fall, and that actually is not supposed to go into effect, I don't think, until 2023.
Oh, okay.
So we have some time for that, and what California is trying to do is they're trying to make it like the Olympics, where you get paid for your likeness. And people that don't understand what that means is getting paid for your likeness is like, getting paid for autograph sessions, or if you're in a video game, or, getting paid if somebody uses your name or uses an image of you. I am not against the Fair Pay to Play Act. What I don't like is how California just kind of bum rushed the whole system and did it ahead of everybody else. Even when the NCAA asked, like, hold up, can we talk about this? They pushed forward. Makes me think that the politicians here in California must have been coming up on an election year and they were caving into public pressure, because that happens all the time. I'm not against it, but it needs to be consistent across the board or just not be allowed. And I'm glad that the NCAA is now they're forced to have to discuss it now. They're forced to have to. Here's what happens. If that goes into play in 2023 and the NCAA hasn't come up with some sort of resolution, now you have all the schools in California. Imagine Cal or
that
Stanford.
advantage.
UCLA, USC, well, first of all, they might be removed from the NCAA if they don't get it on the same page, because now it's a complete recruiting advantage. And if I'm a like, take the Pac-12 conference. It's got a lot of California schools. You also have Arizona, Washington. You got schools like that. If I'm a coach at, say, UCLA, I'm telling every single recruit, hey, if you come to come to my school or another school in California, you're actually going to get paid from your likeness. So my competitiveness against California schools is the only schools I have to worry about. But they're not going to go to Washington from UCLA if they're going to get paid to go to UCLA for their likeness, but not in another state. There is going to be all kinds of improper activity going on. And honestly,
wait, you're trying to say, Richie, there's not all kinds of improper activity going on? No, is that what
absolutely there is, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I'll tell you this, man: if the NCAA passes it, it's going to be used to an advantage, even more so than what you're talking about, Justin. Because here's what's going to happen: coaches are going to call boosters, and they're going to say, "Hey, we're allowed to pay players for their likeness now. So I know you own this business. I know you usually funnel us money under the table, but now let's do it legally. Hey, can you pay him an absurd amount of money? Let's pay him $100,000 to do a 2-hour autograph session in August when he gets to campus. Okay, now I can do this without being under the table because it's legal." But see, like a school like Robert Morris University or University of Evansville or Austin Peay or UNC Greensboro, or I could go Bethune-Cookman, they don't have boosters oftentimes with those kind of budgets like the Power 5 schools do, right? So, you have to – it just benefits schools that have boosters that can sneak that money or make that arrangement to pay somebody for their likeness. And I just don't think it's a good look, to be honest with you.
I guess from where I sit, Justin, just to touch on something Richie was mentioning, where I don't think the NCAA will have a choice, because you have, in addition to California, there's Colorado and 32 other states, including Florida, considering this type of legislation. So the hand of the NCAA might be forced. But now, putting on another hat, what about the players? Because now you have these 17, 18, 19-year-olds potentially becoming multimillionaires. And you already see in the pro ranks how younger players struggle with that kind of influx of money. Is there any consideration to what, the impact of this influx will have on these individual players?
Well, I think the NCAA is considering it, and I think that's why they've been so slow to want to do something about it. I think most of the people that push for this stuff don't understand the implications that's going to happen. Marsha, you just nailed one of them. How are these kids going to handle that kind of money? And then there's a whole issue about making players employees. Mm-hmm. And then there's all these other issues that we could just talk about. Players make money already. They get cost of tuition. This is Division I players. They get cost of tuition, so they get a little stipend all the time. The whole idea of players are so poor they can't afford a pizza, not true at most Division I institutions. They're getting some funds coming in. They're also getting what's called a Pell Grant if they already are coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They're already getting free money from the government. So it's not as bad as people try to make it seem to be. Here's the deal. If college basketball goes into this whole thing of paying players, and people say, well, if they're going to get paid under the table by these big schools anyway, might as well make it legal. Do you really think it's going to stop? The reason players get paid under the table by some of these bigger programs is to have a recruiting advantage. It's a competitive advantage. If everybody's making money from the NCAA, getting money to play, getting money for this, a stipend, whatever it may be, do you think that the illegal money is going to stop? No, because everybody's already getting money, so let me get a competitive advantage. Hey, you're going to make that money, but you know what? We're going to get you this amount of money on the side, too. Just don't tell anybody. It's still going to happen. And when does it end? So is this Division I basketball and football players are the ones that are going to get paid to play college sports, but the Division III cross-country runner or on the bowling team player, these sports don't make any money at all. They actually they actually spend money that the bigger programs actually make for the institutions and for the NCAA. Are they going to make money too? Like, where does it end? Like, it's going to be way too complicated. And does it go on to Division II players and Division III players? I mean, where does this stop?
Oh, took away my question, because that's what the next thing I wanted to know. I know that Division I basketball and Division I football are the big money earners, obviously, for the NCAA. But the problem is, like, even track and field, which is a huge sport, That's not exactly a major money-making entity for the NCAA. And then that's at the Division I level. So when you go past that, as you say, to lacrosse or these smaller sports, how does that then work out for that, for tennis and all the other sports? How does that parlay into those sports, this law that's going to be passed?
Exactly. I don't have an answer. And that's exactly my point. Like, people that push for this don't quite, I'm going to say, I mean, are people that do quite understand it, and maybe they have their reasoning, but there's a lot of people that push for it on social media that haven't played a sport past the age of 6. And they think it's a great idea, and they don't understand how the dynamics of it will work behind the scenes. And, the NCAA gets a lot of criticism because, they are a moneymaker. But yet at the same time, I think there is a sense of there being an educational aspect of it. I'm not a fan of making college sports professional sports. There's a difference. If a player wants to go play professional out of high school, go do it. That's cool. But you can't tell me that a player like Zion Williamson, I'm just going to use him because he's the latest example, you can't tell me that Zion Williamson would have become as popular and increased his brand if he was playing for the local G League team that nobody watches. So he is increasing his value by playing college basketball. Nobody cares about the South Bay Lakers in Los Angeles. And I don't even know the names of most G League teams. Nobody cares about these teams. They're there for developing players to go into the NBA. Nobody's watching it, but people do care about Duke University. People do care about University of Texas or Kentucky, right? There's how you can really create your brand, which will get you money in the long run, in my opinion.
Right. So then the question that has to be asked, Richie, and I agree with your point to an extent, but then when the NCAA is making, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars, and essentially, billions, and essentially their work staff are these kids who are not seeing or not reaping the rewards. Yes, you mentioned the Zion, who's at the very top, but let's say, for argument's sake, a teammate like his, like Delorier, that comes off the bench. No, the NCAA, he can say that they're making money off of him, but he's not seeing the rewards. So then what's your answer towards that?
Like, should we pay him the same as Zion Williamson or somebody at that level?
Right. Well, no, like, for him, like,
what is the solution?
Then what's the solution?
That's the problem. I think
Zion. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think the best thing to do is, sure, I understand paying people for their likeness. I get that. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I think if we can make it across the board and make it consistent, maybe put some limitations on it so that it's not going to be used out of control for recruiting advantages and whatnot, that'd be fine with me. But I just don't. The guy at the end of like me, I was a walk-on in college. Okay, I was basically a practice player who would get in when, as a Division I school, I would get in when we were up by a lot or down by a lot. But I was making my teammates better in practice. Do I deserve the same? Would I deserve in that case the same pay as somebody on the team who was an all-conference player? I mean, probably not. So, but how does the NCAA differentiate that? I think it's got to be the same across the board, and that's why I was saying, where does it stop? Does it go on to Division II and III? Does it go on to every single sport? Now we're opening in a whole can of worms that I don't know if anybody's going to be able to figure out. And I think the best thing to do is to keep it as is. And there's a lot of criticism for the NCAA. They're making a lot of money, but who's actually getting that money? I mean, do you see the president of the NCAA raking in billions of dollars for his own pocket? I mean, I'm pretty sure he makes a healthy salary, but it's not like people are pocketing this money personally. I mean, I'm sure there are some people making some good money with the NCAA, but I think a lot of that money is going into endowments and also going back into other sports.
Now, Richie, a question for you we see the NCAA seasons have essentially been disrupted. What impact do you think this can have for next year and those 2021 draft classes across different sports?
It's interesting. I had a phone conversation with somebody today whose son is a baseball pitcher at the University of Georgia. And last year he was in his sophomore season, not this year because they'd be playing right now. But last year he was in his sophomore season, and he was, I think, their number 2 or 3 pitcher on a team that was top 5 in the United States in college baseball. And, now they're having to make decisions. This year's not being played. Next year's in question. He's not getting any younger. He's in his young 20s. You got to start considering, should I just go into the draft? Should they go ahead and go through the minor league system, if not get drafted by them or get to a major league team right away? I think the impact is people are going to have to weigh those decisions individually because everybody's in a different position. And you're seeing it this year. There's a lot of college basketball players who have decided to go to the NBA draft. I'm not sure otherwise would have. But I think what they're thinking is, I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't want to linger on a whole nother year, be stuck back at my institution without even being a season. So I might as well go straight to the pros now and go ahead and start getting in that system because I'm going to leave at the end of next season, if not this year anyway. And now next year is in question. And I think it's a realistic concern, I think, is are we going to have sports next season? And it saddens me, but, at the same time, we got to do what's best for the world. I mean, this is beyond sports.
And you mentioned that NBA draft. Do you think the draft should actually go ahead? We've had the NFL draft. We've had the WNBA draft.
It's a great question. I think the difference with WNBA and NFL is that their seasons were over. NBA is still going on. And, they've paused it right now with the hope that they're going to still be able to finish it. So it's very difficult for the NBA to make that decision right now, and it's difficult for me to try to give you my opinion on it because we don't know what the calendar is going to be like if and when the NBA season resumes. So it would be really awkward to have the NBA draft at the same time you normally do if that's still going to be during a time when players or coaches are in season, worried about their next opponent, trying to get into the playoffs, maybe advancing in the playoffs, or maybe they're in the finals. So yes, do I think they should have the NBA draft? Yes, but do I think they should wait until they make a decision on whether or not the NBA season is going to resume, or if they decide to cancel it? Yeah, I think they should wait until they have a feel on everything so that they can make the best judgment for themselves.
Justin, any other questions from you?
Well, any other questions I'm going to ask him about football because you see I'm wearing and ready to go with my jersey on, so...
I didn't bring my Cincinnati Bengals uniform, but I could have worn it for you. Hey, bro.
It's a good time to be a Bengals fan, isn't it?
Yes and no. First of all, it's been a rough life being a Bengals fan, but I am very loyal to my team. I love my Cincinnati Bengals. I'll always be loyal, no matter how good or bad we are. I was a big fan of Marvin Lewis. I wish we hadn't let go of Marvin Lewis, but I think the fans were turning on him, so I understand the business decision, which is leading me to my next point. Drafting Joe Burrow, outstanding talent. I mean, there's no question. But I also think that was a business decision. Andy Dalton gets a lot of criticism. There's a lot of teams that want Andy Dalton right now. He's a fine quarterback. Joe Burrow is a terrific quarterback, very talented, but it's not solving the other problems that we have. If we don't have a good offensive line, Joe Burrow is still going to get smashed just like Andy Dalton was all the time. If we don't have healthy receivers, Joe Burrow is going to have a hard time passing to guys because that's what Andy Dalton had to deal with last year. And there's a lot of holes on the Cincinnati Bengals right now, but they're in a rough spot. We'll get a turnaround. Bengals will be back. Who day?
I think you solved one of those holes. I saw in the second round, the first pick in the second round, you drafted Clemson's T. Higgins. And I think that if you can pair him with A.J. Green for a full season, who knows? To me, outside the Ravens, the AFC North is still in a bit of flux.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying, drafting Joe Burrow is going to bring the fans back. They're going to get super excited. I mean, ticket sales were bad in Cincinnati this past year, really bad. And so now you bring in Joe Burrow, tickets are going to get sold again. And you bring in that exciting wide receiver that you're talking about, tickets are going to get sold. But in my opinion, American football is the ultimate team sport. Now, maybe you could say, traditional soccer or football, as they say in Europe and other places other than the United States. We call it soccer for whatever reason. Maybe you could have an argument for that, but I think American football is the ultimate team sport. Now, the quarterback and the running back and the wide receivers get all the attention because they touch the ball. But all three of those positions are absolutely terrible football players if they don't have a line helping them get open, protecting the quarterback, blockers, good kickers, defensive men, cornerbacks, all that stuff, linebackers. Those players don't get the love at all. You look at the Heisman Trophy. I personally think the Heisman Trophy is the stupidest award in college sports because it always is going to be a quarterback, a running back, or a wide receiver, all but like 7 times in the history of the Heisman Trophy. But what about all those other positions that are so important? Coaches know how important those players are, but as fans, we just pay attention to who gets the ball in their hands, right? So I think, going back to the Cincinnati Bengals and their draft, I think they did a really good job with their draft, but they've always had problems with the offensive line as of late, so that's got to get fixed. And their defense was pretty pitiful last year, so hopefully they'll get that turned around, and we'll get back to some Houday football.
Well, Richie, one final question before we let you go. I'm going to put you on the hot seat a bit. Who would have been your pick to win the NCAA basketball title?
Oh, that's a good one. I can't give you 2 or 3. I gotta think this out loud. I'm not convinced the Lakers were going to beat the Clippers in the conference finals if they both made it. The Rockets were there too, and I'd probably give it to the Lakers though, just because they got who they got. They got LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They got a really good core of players. Then I think on the East it's probably going to be Milwaukee.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to say it was probably going to be the Lakers, and I'm not trying to be a homer here because I live in LA. I'm not really a Lakers fan. I just live here. So I would say the Lakers probably would have had the best shot. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Me personally, I think Clippers had a deeper roster, but as you know, when it comes to playoff time, depth in your roster really doesn't count. As 2-3, your 2-3 best players. So you would have gone the Lakers in the tight Western Conference Finals over the Clippers, and against the Bucks. I personally like the Bucks, and not just because I spend half my time now in Wisconsin. Yeah. I think right now Giannis is easily the best player in the league, but I still think they're one player away. Giannis is great, as I said. Chris Middleton is awesome, but beyond that, no, I don't think that when playoff time comes, it's about individual performers, and I'm not sure if their supporting cast, as good as it is, with Giannis making everyone better, I don't know that they were good enough to beat, Bal Harden, LeBron James, or Anthony Davis. I'm just not sure. So, you would have gone with Lakers.
That was my thought on it too, and I think if you were to look at, I think that the 2 best teams in the West, if I'm not mistaken, in the standings were the Clippers and the Lakers. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced that the Clippers don't have a better roster. I'm not sure they have the better. They don't have LeBron James essentially.
Yeah, they don't have LeBron James. I mean, when you get past the 2 best players, they have LeBron and AD. Clippers have Kawhi and Paul George. When you get past that, the rest of the better players, to me, in my mind, were the Clippers. But in playoff basketball, as you know, it really comes down to the stars. So that's why we're giving the edge to LA. So, sorry, Lakers.
Well, and I'm with you, and that's why I chose the Lakers, because of that. If those guys stay healthy and LeBron was starting to play, LeBron was looking really good down the stretch, and he always does. He's a phenomenal player, and he's like an ageless wonder, especially offensively. But, I think you're right. And the Clippers, though, I live here in L.A. I've lived here for 6.5, 7 years, and ever since I've been here, the Clippers have been the better team from a win-loss perspective every single year. But you can't convince the Lakers fans of that, because it's probably 90%, 10%. I'm probably a closet Clippers fan, though, and I want to see them succeed, because I'm really a big fan of Doc Rivers and what they got going on over there.
Well, as a Boston Celtics fan, I should probably whisper Lakers and not say it too loudly. Well, Richie, thank you so much for joining us here on this Just In and sharing with our audience here in Barbados. Hopefully, we can get you back in Barbados before 2020 is over. I know the current pandemic would have, offset some of your trips so far for this year. But hopefully, as things settle down, we can get you back here. And on your end, once live sport picks up, we'll be seeing you back on the air again.
I appreciate it. You guys do a great job. Marsha, Justin, Neil in the background. Really appreciate you guys. Hey, make sure you tell Dirty Harry, Natalie, and Muscle Cat I said hello. And hopefully I'll get to see you guys here again soon.
Sure, no problem.
Just tell them I said hello.
We'll be glad to have you back.
Is that from Rick or from Richie?
Take your pick, man.
Well, practice social distancing and please keep safe, Richie, man. We'll see you later on the program.
All right, brother. Sounds good, man. Thanks for having me on. I'll see you guys. All right. Bye-bye.
Now, if you're just joining us, that was ESPN College Hoops analyst Richie Schueler giving us the rundown on COVID-19 and its impact on the college system. As Richie leaves us and we prepare for Neil to join us again, we'll go into our later topics. We'll be talking the NFL draft, reviewing that, as well as looking at episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Dance. I know Justin has a lot to say about
Not
that.
anymore.
So,
no.
and as we give Neil a bit of a time to join us, we can see here, we're talking about sport and sport resuming. We have some NBA facilities reopening this coming May. We also have in the UK, for example, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. They've decided, you know what, we're not going to cancel like some of the other Grand Prix. If anything, we're going to hold our date and have it behind closed doors, but the meet itself will still go ahead. And also in football, Arsenal players return to training this week. Like training, they'll be doing social distancing. The word from the team is that there's limited and carefully managed access to the Gunners training facility. So slowly but surely, we are seeing, sports in the US, in the UK, Europe, inching their way back to some sense of normalcy, reopening venues and whatnot. But we had the big NFL draft last week, the NFL pushing ahead. Justin, first of all, your thoughts on the draft?
Where do you want me to start?
I have some licks for you, but I'm going to save the lick for when you settle.
Good night, good night.
Good night, Neil. Thanks for joining us.
Good night, everybody.
And for our viewers, if you've just joined us, I'm Marsha, Boyce, Justin Marville, and Neil Hoyte here on this Just In. We're going to move the discussion now into the NFL draft. Justin has to hold some licks tonight because the Packers do bare foolishness, but we'll stick up in there. Justin, your overall thoughts on the draft?
First, let's start from a technical standpoint. I thought that everything surprisingly went smoothly, considering, as you know, they weren't in one central location. They were supposed to be in Las Vegas this year. So surprisingly, everything went, well, mostly without a hitch. The 32 teams actually being spread across different homes, as you know, the general managers, presidents, coaches, they were not in the same place. So, and with that, the impact was felt because there are, I think there's the least amount of trades in the last 15 years we've seen for the NFL draft. And obviously that was going to be a situation because it would be harder to talk to one team in one war room. So you wouldn't have to call a general manager who's have to call a coach. So it's going to be a lot difficult. So you didn't see many trades. Unfortunately, there was one in the first round that you rather not speak of. Richie spoke about his Cincinnati Bengals. I thought they did well. I mean, obviously they took Joe Burrow number 1. That was expected. I thought what they did late in the draft was great. Nabbing a first-round talent in receiver from Clemson, T. Higgins, getting him early second round. The first pick in the second round was awesome. And then they built up the rest of their team methodically during the draft. I thought they did well. To me, I thought the real winners were the Minnesota Vikings. Pains me to say that as an NFC North rival, but I thought they did well. As much as I am against teams just building by need, I thought they built out their roster very well, considering that they lost Stephon Diggs in a trade to the Buffalo Bills, and also they released Xavier Rhodes, their cornerback, veteran cornerback that is, and they built up their roster very well. Then for somebody like Dallas to grab arguably the best receiver in the draft, CeeDee Lamb at, I think, low teens at like 17, to be able to get him on a star-studded offense that already includes Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper on the outside, and now you have a slot receiver like CeeDee Lamb on that squad. I think that's awesome. Miami grabbing Tua, like fooling the entire world, saying that they were off of Tua, but to get Tua Tagovailoa at 5, I think was a great pick. And then be able to add an offensive lineman also in the first round to protect Tua whenever he plays, because they suspect he's going to redshirt his rookie season. Whenever he plays, that's added offensive line depth. I think they are, to me, the winners of the draft, along with Dallas. They thought they did well. So I'll wait for your questions about the team's jersey I have on right now, but I'll kick it to Neil if he has anything to say about the NFL draft.
Well, before Neil jumps in, I just wanted to touch on something you mentioned in terms of them actually pulling off the draft. And for me, from a media perspective, I thought the production value, given the circumstances, was a good touch. You know, you had that full opening montage. They played on that message of hope with Peyton Manning doing the opening piece. I also like that they still tried to capture that reaction shot of the players still in their homes, etc. And you had those features and they filled time with, you know, analyses and that kind of stuff. So from a production standpoint, they really still tried to pull it together, even though it was a virtual draft.
Did you see the scene? I think it was either CD Lamb. I think it was CD Lamb when he's on one phone and his girlfriend tries to get out the phone that's on his lap.
He just slides it back.
Yeah.
Like not today.
I'm
not
saying
today.
like awesome hands, great awareness, great speed. Yeah, that's what drafted that pick.
Peripherals.
Great
So
peripheral
Neil,
bridge on, like, you know.
your thoughts on the draft?
Well, the thing about the draft, I thought that everything y'all say about Joe Burrow, I kind of agree. But for me, I kind of see him as a mixture of a few quarterbacks, right? So I see him as a combination of Tom Brady. Well, Tom Brady about five to 7 years ago. Oh, we just lost Justin. Oh, dear.
We lost Justin. We'll try to reconnect with him in a bit.
Right. So so he reminds me a bit of Tom Brady, probably a few years ago. Reminds me also in a negative standpoint, right? Phillip Rivers, yes, he has a good arm. Yes, he has a good, well, not really a good arm. It's below average arm. But the thing about Phillip Rivers is that he's right. He has. I like the fact that he's like Drew Brees in that his intensity and on-field presence is almost larger than life. But to me, it would be interesting to see how he as Richie mentioned about having an offensive line that can really keep the defense at bay, and what would happen on that big stage. A nice game that he doesn't throw many interceptions. Also, for me too, Tua Tagovailoa, he went at number 5. I think that my concern for him is that he's a bit short. He's 6 foot. He's pretty big, yes, but he's 6 foot. He has had a lot of injuries. He has a lot of surgeries to his toe as well as to his hip. Well, not his. Sorry, his ankle. He had 2 surgeries to his ankle. Sorry, and he also had to his hip. So I mean, there's that, and then there's also sometimes he takes too long in the pocket and he misses easy reads. Right, so it's almost like he's stuck in that play in pocket, and if he doesn't see that, he only has like blinders on for that. So I'm kind of worried about that too. Some other people that I noticed, Chase Young, he went to Washington, the Redskins. He's a big guy. He's 6'5" defensive end. He can really get after it. But to me, I think he is his on-field awareness, right, and his anticipation is kind of about a below average or average. And then his counter moves to get away from the defense and everything like that are a bit telegraphic. Like people see and know when they're coming. So in terms of him having counter moves that can fool defenses and him getting to the quarterback is a bit of a hit or miss thing. So those are things I'm worried about. And then lastly, CJ Henderson. So CJ Henderson is a cornerback. He's 6'1", about 204 pounds. He's from Florida in terms of the college he went to. So he's playing for Jacksonville. He got drafted at number 9 for. To me, he's a good cornerback. He has good hands and everything. That athleticism. He's nice, slender. He has good poise. But one thing that concerns me about him is how he loses his receiver, his offensive mark in his zone coverage. How he loses the football before the quarterback. And then of course he's 6'1" and 204 pounds. So him jamming the wide receivers at the line in those first 5 yards from scrimmage, I kind of worry because he keeps losing his balance. He has problems keeping his balance and keeping his hips square. So there are those kind of things that I'm kind of worried about for those players in the draft. I didn't get to see all of the draft picks, and I haven't really been in tune to everything because it's a weird time. But yeah, so those are my takes on the picks. I thought that the draft was it was well done. I was kind of worried about how it was going to go. I remember we talking about them having some issues early on in the dry run, but to me it went pretty well. It's kind of weird in that normally you have a screaming crowd, and usually there's a lot of anticipation and excitement from the players that are actually there. But I mean, it was a bit more sedate. Jerbro, he went number one. His parents were there, and it was just kind of like, good job, son. Well done. So it was different, but I mean, to me it was still well done. Oh, forgive me for the sweat. It's kind of hot in here. And Richie had me cracking up. He had me cracking up. So.
Now, Justin, you mentioned that the Vikings being among the teams coming away the biggest winners from the draft, but who would you say were the biggest losers out of this draft?
I'm wearing the team's jersey right now. And this is not a biased opinion. I honestly thought that the biggest losers to the draft, none other than my Green Bay Packers. And it goes beyond the first round draft break that has been the controversial moment of the entire draft. But let's get to that. As we all know, Jordan Love, team moved from 30, traded up to 26 to get Jordan Love on who would seem to be the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers going forward. And a lot of people liken that to the situation because 15 years to the day, we did that when we had Hall of Famer Brett Favre, and we shocked a lot of the world by taking Aaron Rodgers at 24. Let me say quickly, though, that the two scenarios are not the same. In that, I mean that I do not know what we are doing taking Jordan Love. Me personally, I am not an NFL scout by any imagination, but I do try to grade some of these players. And I did not have a first-round grade for Jordan Love. So that's my biggest problem there. Like, I will say I have no problem going after Aaron Rodgers' eventual heir apparent. Aaron is 36, and by December, he will be 37. If there's a season, like before the end of it, he will be 37. So I don't know how much longer he has left. So I have no problem drafting his heir apparent. The problem is his heir apparent has to be good. And this is why he said that the two situations do not mirror themselves. In 2005, Aaron Rodgers shockingly slipped to number 24 because a lot of teams, they graded him as the best quarterback in that draft class. Stunningly enough, I think Alex Smith went number one overall out of Utah. He went number one overall to San Francisco when a lot of teams thought that, it would have been Aaron Rodgers. And he kept sliding. A lot of it because of this misconception that Jeff Tedford coached quarterbacks don't translate well to the NFL level. Yeah. We see how that played out. So when we were drafting at 24 in 2005, it was a situation where the Packers just couldn't pass up. Like, here is you possibly
have into their lap.
He fell into your lap. Like, essentially, you have the best player in the draft falling into your lap at 24. You just can't pass him up. Like, even if down the road you ended up trading him because Brett Favre decides to give you, 10 more years, which is not possible. But if he gave you 10 more years, you have draft capital. Jordan Love, in my estimation, did not carry a first-round grade. And I know that Coach Matt LaFleur, GM Brian Gutenhouse, they kind of fell in love with his raw talent. He has a big arm. And I think a part of the problem is that this is a copycat league. So everyone has seen the success of Patrick Mahomes. And people are looking for the next Patrick Mahomes. And he gives you that sense. In watching him, he does have a bit of Patrick Mahomes in that he can throw off base. A lot of his throws he can throw without a center. And I mean that by saying your 3, 5, or 7 step drops. Usually you pat your back leg, your leg which is same side as your throwing arm, as your base. Use your other leg to pivot. And you use your hips. You kind of snap your hips for that extra torque to get the ball downfield. Players like Patrick Mahomes don't have to do that. Even Aaron Rodgers, they can throw off of multiple bases. I've seen Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes throw with both feet off the ground. They can go either direction. They can roll up to their left. They can roll to their right and make throws thrown across their body. That's a trait that you cannot coach. And I will admit that Jordan Love does have that ability. But the problem is that Jordan Love seems to be a turnover-prone quarterback. in that his last season there at Utah State, he had 17 picks. Now, the excuses given was that he was coming under new head coach, and also like a lot of his skill positions would have been drafted the year in front. But while that can explain drop off in completion percentage or completion numbers or overall touchdowns, that can't explain your rise in interceptions. Interceptions come of one of two things: bad mechanics. Those can be taught. I mean, you can correct a player's mechanics, but you cannot correct a player's poor judgment or inability to see down the field. And I think that is what really, really hampers Jordan Love. When I watch the tape of Jordan Love, I'm seeing a guy staring down defenses and making bad throws, a guy acting like linebackers underneath coverage doesn't exist. And I'm like, how are you choosing this guy at number one? Sorry, your first round draft pick. Obviously, it tells me that you're looking at life beyond Aaron, whether probably that's in 2022. And I have no problem with that. But your heir apparent has to be good. And then you sit down and beyond that first round draft pick now, they draft in their second round draft pick A.J. Dillon, which is even worse. That's a running back. And again, you have Aaron Jones now in your lineup, who was arguably a top 10 running back last season. A.J. Dillon, we took at 62. A lot of scouts did not even have him in their top 250 players. Like, think about that. That is a stretch again. So your first round pick, you took somebody who's a second round talent. And then your second round pick, you took a third or fourth round talent. To explain this to me is, there's just really no explanations. It tells me that you are setting up for the future. And I don't know if that is wise, because both Matt LaFleur and Gudenhouse, they don't have their futures put down. Who's to say that you're drafting players that they may not be around to coach or to sign back again? And this is a team that is one game away from the Super Bowl, albeit that we were beaten badly in that NFC Championship game. Regardless of that, you are in the NFC title game, and you're not giving Aaron Rodgers the help he needs. So, like, as I was talking to Richie, T. Higgins is there to be drafted at number one. Their first round draft pick.
Yeah.
And then you have to trade up that you could have gotten him at 30. And even if you didn't like T. Higgins, Baltimore took Patrick Queen, the inside linebacker that I personally like, at, 27. That's about, if you trade up, you can take him, because you have a huge hole with Blake Martinez leaving in free agency to the New York Giants. And then the third round pick is a tight end that is not slated to see the field at all in 2020, 2021. And beyond that, everything is a future pick. So I don't know what you're basically telling Aaron Rodgers at 36, 37 that you're punting on this season. And it makes no sense if the year in front, you spend big money in free agency to acquire the Smith brothers, Zadarius and Preston Smith, who are actually not brothers, but you spend big money on them, which tells me you're looking to contend now. But then the early part of your draft, you pick in the future. It's just not making sense. So if you ask
we
me,
can agree then, the Packers were the losers.
I saw somebody giving them
yes or no?
I just saying, my head telling us his problems, Marsha.
Without a shadow of a doubt, I saw somebody give them a D grade, and that's too high. If there was a letter behind F, they could grade somebody else. I'd grade them that. I'm sorry.
So quickly then, any surprises or disappointments from the draft?
I think I just spoke the biggest disappointment there. Surprises.
So then we'll go with surprises. Any surprises?
I think CeeDee Lamb falling all the way. He was the second one. Henry Ruggs being the first wide receiver taken. I mean, I like Henry Ruggs personally. I thought when we were trading up, that was what we were looking at. Henry Ruggs going as the first wide receiver to the Las Vegas Raiders, that was a shock. But again, this is a copycat league, so everyone has seen what Kansas City has been able to do with Tyreek Hill scaring the life out of defenses with that speed. So I think that's what they went with Henry Ruggs the third. So CeeDee Lamb actually being the second wide receiver taken, and falling all the way, I think, to 17 to the Dallas Cowboys, as I said, who already had a stat offense. I think that was a huge surprise for me. But otherwise, other than Green Bay's madness, I think everything went as according to plan in my eyes, at least.
So guys, then in our
question, hold on a second, Marsha. I just have a follow-up question. Do you think CeeDee Lamb's size, because I think he's like 6'1" or something like that. Do you think his size caused him to drop to be second wide receiver, number 17 to Dallas?
No, I just think it's a situation where I think it's a bit of cat and mouse. At the top of the draft, typically quarterbacks. So you saw the 3 in the top 6, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, and then Justin Herbert to the Los Angeles Chargers. I have to get used to saying Los Angeles Chargers. It just doesn't make doesn't feel right. Yeah. So you saw 3 in those top 6. There are a lot of offensive tackles that were great. Another surprise is Isaiah Simmons falling all the way to 8 to the Arizona Cardinals. I think they're also building a great situation there in the NFC West. As I told Marsha earlier in my IG Live, he's an inside linebacker that can do it all. He can line up as a slot corner. He can line up free and strong safety. He can pretty much go anywhere. And that's a jackknife type of defenders that people can use now in a hybrid situation where he'll be playing all 3 downs. You don't have to ever take him off the field to worry about size or speed. And then that's particularly crucial in the NFC West, where you're dealing with a team that won the Super Bowl in the San Francisco 49ers. Their best player on offense is huge tight end George Kittle. So hopefully Isaiah Simmons for them matches up well. So getting back to your point with CeeDee Lamb, when you saw those offensive tackles move up a bit early, and then the Los Angeles Chargers reaching a bit to me in my estimation for Justin Herbert, then the wide receivers start dropping down a bit, and there were a ton of them. I think overall there were 30-something taken, 6 in the first round, and it should have been 7 had the Packers did the right thing and taken T. Higgins 30th overall or move up to get him at 26. So you see a situation with a ton of wide receivers. So CeeDee Lamb dropping a bit. I don't think it's with size, because you can see like wide receivers moving anywhere from 5'8" to 6'4". And he gives them, if he's going to play that slot or he's going to play outside alongside Amari Cooper, I think he gives them great size at that position. I know you're going to have to pick your poison. Like when you load up in the box to stop Ezekiel Elliott, now you have Amari Cooper on the other side, and Amari Cooper is a player that you're going to have to use over the top, helping in a free safety. That leaves your poor slot corner, your number 2 corner, having to deal with CeeDee Lamb on the island. And I can tell you, from watching CeeDee Lamb at Oklahoma, for these last 2 years, there are not many slot corners that are going to win their matchup with CeeDee Lamb one-on-one. I can tell you without any help. No, they're not going to win that. No.
So, guys, then in this last 10 minutes, we turn to The Last Dance. We had episodes 3 and 4 coming out yesterday. Most of us watched it today. Your overall thoughts? We got a closer look at Dennis Rodman and Phil Jackson.
Right. So, for me, I didn't learn anything new when it comes to Dennis Rodman. I mean, most of those things are pretty much all those stories I knew before. It was interesting to see how certain intricacies of the story went. For example, I knew that Scotty was out, and I knew Dennis had obviously a big role. I didn't know that this was part because I know they went on a losing a little. They were 8-7 to start the season, but I didn't know it was Dennis was kind of uninterested. And in one game, I think they were beaten by the Miami Heat, and Dennis, kind of felt responsible because there was a lack of rebounding, and they were out rebounded. So Dennis takes very, very much pride in his ability to rebound, and he felt like he let down Michael Jordan himself, because he didn't call out any players or anything like that, but in the post game interviews, he did say that his team was out rebounded. So he took that. Yeah. Right. So he went to Jordan, and he did say, he didn't apologize, but in his own way, he kind of apologized to Michael. And from then he kind of flipped a switch and he was going. So it was kind of like Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman kind of leading the way for the Chicago Bulls. And then obviously Scotty came back, and that relegated Dennis Rodman to number 3. And I think that kind of played on his mind, because Dennis is a person that he thrives on words of affirmation and that pat on the back kind of, you're doing a good job kind of thing. And obviously with Scotty coming back, that is now, the focus is now on Jordan and Pippen. Yeah. And he's kind of gone back to his third role. So he did say he wanted a 48-hour to go to Las Vegas. I don't know why, but I remembered it being Atlantic City, but I don't know why I remember it. But it was Las Vegas, and the story was what it was. But I did like how it transitioned from that into the next episode with Phil Jackson and how he came about his rise to it. Like, to me, the fourth episode was more focused on why the Bulls went out to get stronger, to get Dennis Rodman to implement the triangle so that they could go away from the Collins philosophy of pass the ball to Michael, everybody get out of the way, to the triangle offense from Tech Winter. So it was interesting to see how the Chicago Bulls, Jerry Krause, how he went about crafting the perfect team for getting out of the East at that time, right? Because you have your Boston Celtics, you have your Detroit Pistons. Detroit used to literally beat them to a pulp. So
literally beat them, huh?
Literally, right? So the Bulls, they went and got stronger as soon as they lost in the 1990 Eastern Conference.
Michael put on weight.
Playoff series with them. Then Scotty put on weight. Down to BJ Armstrong, Bill Wellington, and I thought that Bill Wellington did say something that was pretty interesting in that, when you saw Michael Jordan and that competitive fire, everybody says that he's a bit of an arrogant SOB or whatever. But when you see those emotions when he holds the trophy and he cries, I actually realized that Jordan is a very expressive person. It's just you have to understand how he emotes. For example, when they speak about his parents or his father, he kind of does this thing with his mouth. He's kind of fearful of being vulnerable in those moments. And then when it comes to things like talking about Isaiah Thomas and how he was kind of remorseful for what happened back in the Bad Boy Pistons days, and Jordan was like, I don't care what he has to say. I don't want to see, like, the director was like, come look at what Isaiah had to say. Man, I don't care what he got to say. As like concerned, he just feel bad because it was, it put his legacy kind of in a bad light and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I'm loving it. I'm loving how it is. And it is all in service to telling the story. I think it's more in service of not necessarily telling the last dance, but kind of encapsulating that dynasty or those dynasties of the Chicago Bulls from a nothing team in the 80s to being on the cocaine train, as they said, and having all these players kind of being the dynasty that we know and love. And the last dance is just the full stop, the punctuation on that chapter in the NBA.
For me, watching the episodes, when I heard, obviously I grew up watching the Bulls dynasty, and Chuck Daly, rest in peace, he used to say the reason why the Bulls finally were able to get past them was because it's not that Jordan got any better. It was because Horace Grant and Scottie Pippen became Horace Grant and Scottie Pippen. And I thought, he used to think a lot of that had to do with their own personal growth and development into becoming, Scottie becoming obviously a Hall of Fame level talent. Horace being a can't miss jump shooter from out to 18 feet. But then in watching The Last Dance, as I say, every episode, kind of gives me information I didn't know. And what I realized, it wasn't that they personally developed. It was that, again, and this is why I keep saying, as much as Jerry Krause is playing the villain, he is very core to the success. Because what happens, the development of Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant, is because of Phil Jackson. Neil alluded to it before. Doug Collins, for as good as a coach he was, his philosophy was to keep the ball in Jordan's hands, and we live and die by that. And in his infinite wisdom, Jerry Krause realized this is not working, or this will not work to beat a championship level team like Detroit and later on LA. So he got rid of that.
Especially not to cross you, but especially a team like the Detroit Pistons that had the Jordan rules.
So go ahead, Marsha, so I can continue.
No, I'm just saying, while I agree with you and the mastermind that Jerry Krause was, et cetera, the issues I have. And even the way he did that, you had Phil lurking all the while when Collins was still expected to do a particular job. And for me, as good as a GM he was, to me, he did business badly, if I can
Right,
put
so
it
I'm going to get to that, right? So he saw a chance, and Jordan didn't agree with it early on. And that's the funny thing, like, Jordan wanted Doug Collins to stay, and then look at the situation. in the end, Jordan says he's not playing another game if Phil Jackson goes.
No, Phil, yeah.
Look at the funny thing, like Jerry Krause's infinite wisdom realized this is not going to be a team that is prepared to load up and beat the hell out of Michael Jordan. So he realized that players had to the players around him had to be better. And here is Tex Winter all the time saying, Doug Collins' ball has to move. Doug, the ball has to move. And so then he puts Phil Jackson, who he drags up from Puerto Rico. I didn't even know that either.
Yeah.
He drags up Phil Jackson and says, this is the way to go. And, again, Jerry doesn't get credit for that. Like, Phil Jackson obviously gets all the credit for implementing Tex Winter's triangle offense. But who made sure that offense was run? Like, because if you heard early in the documentary, Jerry constantly says one of the greatest minds is on the team and not being utilized in Tex Winter. So he made sure to elevate Phil to utilize Tex Winter and his triangle offense. And that, in turn, developed Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant into who they are. And then all of a sudden,
and it allowed people like Bill Paxton and Steve Kerr to shine in key moments in the finals.
I just remember what Phil Jackson said in that first championship run. He goes to Michael and said, "Who's open?" And he's like, "Paxton." Oh, get him the ball.
Exactly.
Get him the ball.
Yeah.
Now remember Mike's earlier comment when he said, "Fine, he's not about." I mean, you can hear about equal opportunity offense, but having the ball in Bill Cartwright's hand with 5 seconds to go, that's not winning.
That ain't winning basketball.
Oh, but let's look back. John Paxson hits big shots to beat Detroit. John Paxson hits big shots to beat my Phoenix Suns in the 93 finals. Steve Kerr hits big shots against Utah in 96 and 97. 97 and 98, sorry. And this is a part because Tex Winter, who goes to Phil Jackson, and guess who puts Phil Jackson in charge? The villain himself, Jerry Krause. So this keeps showing me, I'm not telling you, Marsha, I agree with you, he did business badly. To sit down and say Phil Jackson is not going to coach another year is beyond me. But it shows me he deserves credit where he was not getting credit. And when you look at other situations, as I said, the logo, Jerry West, he gets credit for the Lakers 2000 dynasty with Shaq and Kobe. He gets credit for building the Golden State dynasty, Steph, Draymond, and Clay. And he gets credit now for the Los Angeles Clippers in assembling Clay, Kawhi, and Paul George. And yet, Jerry puts together all these pieces, and he's the villain of the show.
Because he was a villain.
He was not a people's person. That's just it.
To quote my
I guess he stand out for me. Go ahead.
No. To quote my guy Adrian, my guy Silky, I live in a results-oriented world, and well, the results are 6 championships.
For me, these last 2 episodes, I really like the emphasis that was placed on Dennis Rodman, and you got a chance to understand him a bit. And for me, it made me realize without Phil was probably the perfect coach for him. And some people talk about serendipity. That I can't see another coach working with Dennis Rodman and getting what he got. Even their shared interest in Native American artifacts. Like, it was almost too perfect. Like, it couldn't have worked any other way.
Right, and they want to address that.
One can say that's Jerry Krause.
Well, oddly enough, I will say that Jerry was the one who didn't want Rodman, so that's the one straight on they have on Jerry. But I want to go to the point, I'm glad you brought it up, Marsha. Phil Jackson may be an underrated coach, because I know that a lot of people say that Phil Jackson had so much superstar talent. No, I mean, period. Because a lot of people say, and I heard people actually tell me, Phil Jackson is a beneficiary of superstar talent, Hall of Fame talent, because he's had Jordan and Pippen, he's had Shaq and Kobe. I want you to know that 3 of those 4 players have never won without Phil. Phil's ability to manage egos, is the greatest thing I've ever seen that sets him apart
and to relate and connect to players as well.
Yeah.
Like, as you said, like, in the modern day, who the hell is letting Dennis Rodman not only take
Just go
a
off.
48, not a 48-hour vacation. We know Dennis Rodman. You're letting Dennis Rodman take 2 days in Vegas? In Vegas?
Sex, drug, and rock and roll, boy. That's all it was. Sex,
Like
drugs,
Mike,
and rock and roll.
as Mike said, this man ain't coming back. And for Phil to realize,
I love that part. I love it.
for Phil to realize this is what it's going to have to take to keep Dennis Rodman interesting. And I love the story that Mike has to go back and Carmen Electra is hiding the sheets. I need to drag this man out at his hotel room. So then Phil is worried about his shape, being in shape, as you know. So like everybody's upset. Oh my God, we got this Indian drill. And guess who they can't catch for 4 laps? Dennis Rodman. Like, and who, I can't think of any other coach. And we talk about the great coaches. We talk about Bill Belichick in New England. Bill Belichick's a no-nonsense guy. He can't deal with a Dennis Rodman. And then even a lesser, when you talk about my guy Pop in San Antonio, I can't see Pop dealing with Dennis Rodman. And to make sure that this guy, you sacrifice 2 games to make sure that they win a championship. Now, I think this is going to sound odd me saying this, Phil Jackson is actually underrated.
Guys, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, so Justin, what do you think the conversation was between Chuck Daly and Isaiah Thomas when he was asked to coach the 1992 Dream Team? How do you think that conversation went?
Boy, I think like Isaiah's going to call Chuck Daly and ask, man, what's going on? And Chuck Daly's like, it was either me or you, and well, you went with me.
You mean if he answers the phone?
Because I'm like, as I was telling you today, this is not hearsay, Magic spoke to Mike, and Mike said, I don't have a problem playing under Chuck Daly, but if that guy, Isaiah Thomas, is going to come on this Olympics team, you can rule me out.
It won't be there.
When somebody goes to Chuck Daly and say, well, look, boy, the man can play with Mike, but not your man, Isaiah. What do you think?
Can't play. So you could either coach without Isaiah, or you can not coach without Isaiah. But the underlying thing is, we're not doing this with Isaiah.
You know, there's the infamous Magic me know, like, I'm not going to be here.
Well, guys, it's been real. We want to thank all of our viewers tonight. This second episode of This Just In. A special thank you to our special guest, Richie Schueler, who joined us earlier, the ESPN college basketball analyst, as we touched on COVID-19 and the impact on the college system, particularly the NCAA, as well as the NFL draft. And of course, you just heard The Last Dance. You can follow us right here on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're everywhere. So please be sure to give us that like, give us that follow, give us that share, and join us right back here again next week, Monday, same time, 8 p.m. for This Just In. I'm Marsha Boyce.
Marsha, don't forget, this Thursday we have a special mailbag episode.
Yes.
Not on Facebook, but on Instagram. So you can follow at @the_Justin_Marville on Instagram, or you can go our professional page at This Just In. I think it's This Just with the number 1 and N to see. I think it will be me and Neil tackle your questions. So whatever questions, I know I saw some of you commenting on our live feed. Unfortunately, we can't answer them right now, but you can save them and follow us on IG, and me and Neil will be, available to answer anything you have, like anything sports related, and we'll be here.
So any questions, any comments, any even topics that you would want us to discuss, you can drop those things in the comment section and let us know. Final goodbyes from you, Neil?
Just stay safe. Be missing sports. And Richie's a character.
I think he earned his Beijing card tonight with that last
For sure.
I won't shout them out, no.
No.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week. Bye.
All right. Good night, everybody.